Grad school, along with many other academic and professional spaces, wasn't built for first gen and BIPOC folks like us. And yet here you are, navigating it all, often without the adequate support you deserve. That's why I created Office Hours with me, Doctora Yvette, a budget-friendly, high-impact coaching and consulting space designed specifically for first-gen, BIPOC, and or neurodivergent grad students, postdocs, and early career professionals. It's a 50-minute small group drop-in session where you can ask me anything about productivity, imposter phenomenon, burnout, setting boundaries, grad school apps, funding and financial literacy, career development, and more. You can even stop by and just have me chat it up with you about a recent podcast episode if that works for you. You'll receive strategies and a supportive space to figure things out together. Spots are capped at 8 participants to keep it intimate and interactive and to make sure I can answer everyone's questions. Sessions happen twice a month for a limited time. To be honest, I'm not sure how long I'll keep this offer available. So sign up now at the link in the show notes and let's get you the support that you deserve. Have you ever sat down to read and all of a sudden, a few pages in, you've completely forgotten everything that you've read? Or have you ever stared at your laptop and you just cannot figure out for the life of you how to get started on this big course paper? If this is you, you're not alone. These are actually signs of executive functioning challenges. And in this 2-part series, I'm going to be talking about the mental skills you need to thrive in higher education and beyond, especially if you are first-gen, BIPOC student or professional, navigating spaces that require a lot of demands. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on inclusive grad school stories and learn about personal development and productivity tips. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez-Vu, a certified coach, consultant, and author, and I will be serving as your Femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you reach your personal and professional goals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Doctora Yvette. In fact, I was about to say this is your coach, Doctora Yvette. Why? Because this is what I do in my coaching sessions, especially with grad students, is teaching the fundamentals of executive functioning skills and how to strengthen them. And I want to debunk this idea that only certain people need to worry about their executive functioning skills. All of us need to worry and focus on strengthening our executive functioning skills. Why? Because they vary. They vary based on your energy, based on the time of day, based on your hormones, based on your nutrition, based on your sleep, based on your age. There's so many things that can impact our executive functioning skills. And we all have strengths and challenges. Some of us happen to have more challenges, and that's why we need extra support and even accommodations. And that if that's you, that's okay. But no matter what, this episode is for you if you are curious and interested in learning some new strategies on how to strengthen your executive functioning skills. I mentioned this is a 2-part series, so I'm going to have a second episode to cover the rest of the skills I don't get to cover today. And the irony is that I've been wanting to record on this topic for a while now. And what got in the way was me overcomplicating it. I started to plan it out and thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to cover 10 skills and each skill is going to have its own dedicated episode. And then as I started to think through how to execute it, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is way more complicated than I thought. And oh my gosh, am I really going to spend the next 3 months talking about executive functioning skills on my podcast if I release one episode per week? So in any case, even for me, I had to remind myself, how can I make this simple? How can I make this easy? How can I make this digestible? Not just for myself, but also for my audience members. So this is why we're doing a 2-part series. So let's get straight to it. For today, I'm actually going to be covering executive functioning skills related to input and processing. So specifically, I'm going to be talking about your working memory, your attention control or sustained attention. I'm going to be talking about cognitive flexibility, and I'm going to be talking about metacognition. And I'm going to offer 3 strategies that you can implement to strengthen each of those skills. And for those of you that are new to the world of executive functioning skills, I want to encourage you to check out a previous episode that I recorded on Executive Functioning Skills 101. I will link it in the show notes. But just briefly for now, I will say that executive functioning skills are the things that allow you to execute, to get things done. So these are cognitive processes that help you to do things like plan, focus, remember important information, and manage your day-to-day. And these are essential skills for navigating college, grad school, your career. So this is why it's important. Starting with working memory. What is working memory? Working memory is your brain's mental workspace. And by that, I mean it's your brain's ability to temporarily hold and manipulate information. This is separate from short-term memory and it's separate from long-term memory. And when I think about working memory, I think about things that you can recall in any given moment. And for most people, they can only recall about 4 to 7 things at once. For me, it might even be 3 things because sometimes I'm going from one thing to the next, and in my head, I'm telling myself, I'm repeating certain words, the 3 things I need to do to not forget until I can either get it done or write it down somewhere so I don't forget. So that's what I mean by working memory. Working memory sometimes can impact you if you are struggling to follow along in discussions, or if you find yourself interrupting someone when you're responding back to them for fear that you're going to forget what you're going to say. Working memory can also impact your ability to even keep track of multiple sources as you're doing your writing. And in any case, what are some of the strategies that you can implement today to help you to strengthen your working memory? The first is to externalize things. So instead of keeping it all in, externalize it with external tools. You can create concept maps to associate certain things that you're learning with key concepts. You can create Cornell notes. And that's a very particular style of note-taking. If you want to look it up, you can learn more about that. You can even use software tools like Notion or create voice memos for yourself so that you don't forget what you are trying to recall. Another strategy is to practice chunking. And by that, I mean grouping related information together. So as you're reading, let's say if you struggle to retain information, one resource that I share with my clients is I give them a reading strategies document that helps them to pinpoint the most important information from each of their readings. So making sure that you're not just reading passively, but you're reading actively and you're grouping relevant and important information together. The third strategy for building and improving your working memory is to visualize information. And a lot of really incredible people who have like the world's best memory, they use this technique. Let's say they're trying to remember a random assortment of cards. And so the cards, they're playing cards and they're assorted in a random order. They will associate each card with a specific location and a place that they memorize. And so as they're recalling not just the card information, but the location of where they have associated it in this random place in their head. So visualizing that information, so associating information with diagrams, with spaces, with mental imagery that can actually help you. The second executive functioning skill I'm going to be covering today is attention control, or what some of us call sustained attention. So that is your ability to direct and sustain focus while also being able to filter out the rest, so filter out any distractions. This can come up sometimes if you find yourself getting distracted by phone notifications, by emails, by trying to multitask, by calls, or anything. It could be your pet, it could be your child. You might have a lot of distractions in your environment. You might also be especially fatigued. So you might be dealing with the mental fatigue of having to do a lot of code switching, of heavy cognitive load. You're having to notice a lot of things like microaggressions in your environment. All these things get in the way of you sustaining your attention on whatever it is you're trying to do in any given moment. Maybe you're trying to learn from a lecture. Maybe you're trying to listen to an advisor. But if there's all these things going on, that adds to your mental fatigue. So what can you do about it? When you're trying to strengthen your attention control, one of the things that I recommend a lot, and this is also tied to time management, is I recommend working in focus blocks of time that are timed, and you want to work in intervals that work for you. The most popular interval is the Pomodoro technique, where you work in 25-minute intervals and then you take 5-minute breaks. But you don't have to do it this way. You can work in 5-minute intervals. You can work in 10-minute intervals. You can work in 45-minute or hour-long intervals. It's whatever works for you based on your ability to focus in any given moment. So when you're struggling to focus, shorter blocks of time. When you are able to sustain your attention a little bit longer, you work your way towards the longer timers. The second strategy you can implement is what some people call deep work scheduling. And by this is a nod to the work of Cal Newport. He has several books tied to these ideas of deep work, and he also talks about it in his podcast. In any case, this idea of deep work is referring to your ability to make time for complex, high-energy tasks that require a lot of sustained attention. So you can work in 2 to 3 hour focus blocks, or you can reserve a certain day of the week where you try to limit meetings, where you try to limit distractions, and you're trying to work in an extended period of time on something that requires extended focus. The last strategy is called attention restoration. So how do we restore ourselves when we're feeling like we are all over the place? I'm feeling like that right now, I'll have to admit. And one of the things that helps me a lot is getting out of the house, going out and taking a walk in nature, getting some physical movement done. Any movement is better than no movement. And I say this as someone who is a spoonie, and my ability to move and exercise changes depending on how I'm feeling and how flared up I might be. And so depending on how you're doing, what can you do to restore your attention? Can you go outside? Can you go to a park? Can you take a walk? Can you move in some way, shape, or form? And if so, do that to restore your attention. Hi, Femties. I'm gently interrupting the show to let you know that you can be a sponsor for the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. Whether you're a small business owner, a book author, or part of an educational startup looking to reach a loyal audience, this is your chance to showcase your work. My listeners are first-gen BIPOC college students, grad students, and early career professionals who value mentorship, education, and empowerment. If it sounds like a fit, head to the show notes to learn more about sponsoring an episode. Now I'm going to talk about a third executive functioning skill, and this is your ability to be flexible. So cognitive flexibility is the next one. And this is your ability to adapt your thinking and switch strategies when circumstances change. So this is your ability to go with the flow, your ability to embrace change. And I will also say that this is one that I also struggle with. And this is because I like having my set schedule, knowing what to expect. And when things change, it does throw me off. But guess what? You can strengthen this skill, and I really have. So how do you know that you might be struggling with cognitive flexibility? If you struggle to adjust to changes in your research plan, changes in any events that you had in mind, changes in whatever it is that comes up, when something doesn't go as planned or fails and you struggle to adjust to that, that means that you are struggling with cognitive flexibility. And you might also notice that you struggle with it if you struggle with feedback, for instance, or if you struggle with working in environments that require a lot of agility and adapting to things. Now, how do you strengthen your cognitive flexibility? You can strengthen it by, this is going to sound very coach of me, but by working on your mindset and learning to reframe and shift your perspective about things. So instead of viewing problems from the lens that comes up for you, you want to reframe it as like, okay, so this is what's happening. It seems like it's an inconvenience and it's uncomfortable, but also, is there any upside to this? Is there a silver lining? How can I view this differently? So changing your lens can help you so that it becomes less of a big deal sometimes with that mindset shift. Another strategy is what some people call alternative pathways mapping. So it's already thinking about multiple routes in advance. And I actually love this idea because I like to encourage this idea when I work with grad students and they're thinking about their career. A lot of folks are really honed in on this one pathway. They're like, I'm going to become a professor, or I'm going to become, you name it. And it's just this one set idea. And I'm like, well, what if you had multiple options and they would all be just as valid and they could all lead to an equally fulfilling life? What would those other options be? So this thinking about alternative paths, alternative options, being reminded that you have multiple options all the time, it's really helpful with strengthening your cognitive flexibility. So that's actually my favorite one because I do this a lot for myself too, is in any given moment, I know that I can pivot. And the last strategy that I want to mention for this is tied to embracing your strengths. So no matter what happens, even when you're dealing with a lot of change, you have lived experiences and you have that experiential knowledge that is an asset that can help you to deal with whatever's coming at you. Think about like your key character traits. Maybe you see yourself as someone who's very resilient or very determined or very committed or whatever the name is for that trait. You can go back and think to yourself, when have I faced something hard and how did I overcome it? And am I able to overcome this now? So if you go back and find evidence for ways that you have proven to yourself that 1, you can get through hard things, 2, you have strengths and assets, and 3, you will get through this. This will help you with being more flexible no matter what comes your way. Now, the fourth executive functioning skill I'm going to talk about is metacognition. And this is your ability to think about thinking. And actually, I love this idea, the concept of thinking about thinking. So this is about self-awareness. This is about learning and learning more about yourself and how you work. So this can be a way for you to figure out, how do I adapt my learning strategies to what works for me? How can I get better at, this is the personal growth piece of figuring out more things about myself that are going to help me to better deal with whatever is coming up for me based on knowledge that I have about myself. So thinking about yourself as like, you are full of data and you have all of these experiences, and all of these things are teaching you something about how you can make decisions about the future and how you can deal with things that are coming your way. So metacognition, being aware, thinking about thinking, and thinking about how you think and what works best for you. What are some strategies to strengthen your metacognition? This is something I've said before, and I think some of you are going to roll your eyes at me, and I'm going to say it anyway. Journaling. Yes, journaling. If you don't like to journal, it's fine. I'll give you another option. Instead, you can do monthly check-ins or monthly assessments. I have another episode where I talk about 10 reflective questions you can ask yourself to make sure you stay on track with your goals. That is another one that can help you. But the whole point of journaling or assessing yourself is to track what's coming up for you, track what you're learning, track how you're learning it, and learn from it. The second one is something I do every single time I work with my sustainable productivity coaching clients, with my graduate student clients, with my dissertation writing clients. And this is all about strategy testing. It's figuring it out through trial and error, trying different techniques, different strategies, different methods, and then comparing the results, what worked better, and then iterating often until you have arrived at a system for yourself that works for you. And then the third strategy is about reflecting. So reflecting on your life, what you have going on, but doing it from a cultural lens. And by this, I mean, it's really thinking about, what have you learned from your family, from your culture, and how can you take your learnings and apply it to how you do things? So maybe you come from a community that embraces a lot of oral traditions. Maybe that means that for you, you might want to do your writing in an oral way by working with voice memos or by recording yourself and then from there transcribing it and revising it, etc. So really learning from your cultural traditions, learning from your community, and what might work for the community might also work for you too. So reflecting on that can be really, really helpful. All right, those were the first 4 forms of executive functioning skills I wanted to cover today. For the next episode, I'm going to be talking about executive functioning skills tied to output and action skills. So really like taking action, doing the thing. So we're going to talk about planning, we're going to talk about organizing, we're going to talk about time management, and we're going to talk about emotional regulation, because yes, that's tied to you taking action too. So just to wrap things up, I want to remind you that the 4 executive functioning skills I covered today were working memory, attention control, cognitive flexibility, and metacognition. And I challenge you to choose one, maybe the one that is a bigger challenge or bigger struggle for you. And based on that one, apply one of the strategies that I mentioned today, and then report back. Let me know, leave a comment on Spotify, send me an email, and I will definitely be talking to you all next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and podcast playlists on all things grad school, productivity, and personal development. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @Grad School Femtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.